going to call this, and if I can get everybody to mute who's not speaking right now. I just want to welcome everyone and call this meeting of the March 11th Recovery Task Force to order at 4 p.m. I'll start by taking a roll call vote or a roll call of attendance. So please unmute yourself and say here when I call your name. Jason Boyce.
Here.
Welcome, Jason. Marisol Visser.
Here.
Welcome, Marisol. Mike Brennan.
Here.
Super. Nina Milligan.
Here.
Hi, Nina. Pavel Aprikian. And actually, please correct my pronunciation, Pavel. I can see Pavel, but I can't hear him yet. I'll come back to Pavel. Issaquah Sam. I don't believe Sam is here today. Trish Blur.
Here.
Welcome, Trish.
Yeah.
Berkey Scholl has an excused absence today. Grace Chen has an excused absence today. Janine Sanders.
Here.
Hi, Janine.
Hello.
Shashi Kulkarni.
Hi. Yes. Here.
Hi, Shashi. Marlene.
There.
Hi, Marlene. Is it Waxa? Did I say that correctly? And Ron Paul has an excused absence. And is Stephanie Solomon with us here today? Don't see Stephanie. I'm going to come back and see if we can get Pavel to test his microphone. We do have him, but it doesn't seem like he is able to use audio right now. So I'd also like to acknowledge that we have some staff participating in today's call. We have City Administrator Wally Bobkowitz with us, Executive Assistant Joanne Scara, and our cable operator David Mitchell, who is recording and televising for us. We have some additional guests with us today. From Eastside Fire and Rescue, Andrew Stevens is joining us. From Parks and Community Services, Director Jeff Watling. From the city's Economic Development Manager, Jen Davis-Hayes, and our Human Service Manager, Monica Negrilla. So the next item on the agenda today is the minutes of February 11th, 2021, so it's 2020. And staff has noted that there was an error in the minutes and will correct the mention of the January 11th minutes here, and the date, I believe, is February 11th, 2021. And the actual meeting date will be shown in the minutes of January 14th, 2021. Are there any objections to approving the February 11th, 2021 minutes as presented and amended? You can use the chat box. Okay, it looks like we're not seeing any objections, so hearing none, the minutes are approved as corrected. And I will open up the chat, since I previously didn't have that, just in case anybody's trying to get my attention. Okay. Back to the agenda. Joanne, has anyone signed up for public comments today?
No, not today.
Great, thank you. So we're moving into our regular agenda items. The first thing up today is the Community Vaccine Partnership update, and I'm glad to welcome Andrew Stevens here today. Andrew, I don't believe you have addressed this group before. Andrew is with Eastside Fire and Rescue, and we have been having some Monday morning meetings to collaborate on how we can advance vaccine management in Issaquah and how we can help out. And so, Andrew, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pauley. Welcome. Thank you for having me today. So I wanted to give a quick update on our vaccine operations here on the east side. I don't know if I have the opportunity to share my screen by chance. I think I do. Yes. Let me do this real quick. So just a real simple couple of slides. You guys can see the PowerPoint. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. We can.
Perfect. So we did secure an agreement with Washington State Parks to utilize the Lake Sammamish site. We have built out the location this week. What you're seeing is basically the beginnings of that. We were adding some additional signages, some offices, and starting to build out the site as we go this week. So we have 2 lanes of vehicular drive-through that should be available as soon as we are able to obtain vaccine from King County. Quick, just kind of diagram of what that site looks like. Patrons will enter the Tibbetts Beach parking lot. They'll be able to divide it into 2 lanes. There they'll be screened, asked demographic and health questions that will be captured within our registration software. They'll move on to the vaccination tents where they'll be inoculated, and then they'll move on to a ferry-style waiting line. We'll have 2 lanes of 15-minute observation and 1 for 30 minutes for some of those higher risk individuals. And as their time wears out, they're able to just leave, and whether they can go buy a Discovery Pass on their way out and take advantage of the park. But we're happy to have this site. I was on several calls with King County, both OEM and public health this week, and even though our metrics do appear somewhat better than parts of the region, they're starting to even out. And if you look, there's not really any other site serving Eastern King County in the works, or any other jurisdictions that have stepped so far forward with this initiative. So we're happy to have it. I think now that the location is there, you will see a lot more discussion, a lot more interest in what we're doing. Let me stop sharing. How do I do that? There we go. Sorry, this is the 4th or 5th different type of telework technology I've used today. So I'm very Teams friendly. But besides this effort, we are looking to ways we can support Issaquah School District as well as Lake Washington School District. We've told them that we'd be able to, if Issaquah School District now is carrying out some mass vaccination sites within Issaquah Middle School. If they want to continue that and can able to receive vaccine, and they don't want to use that location anymore because of they're standing up school or extracurricular activities, they'd be able to utilize this site as well. We've offered the same thing to Lake Washington School District, and we're starting to just work with the partners. Same if they have extra doses at the end of the day, if they had ordered more and they don't have enough teachers, they can work with our mobile vaccination teams. We've been working hand in hand with the jurisdiction's human service representatives to identify a vulnerable population. So say if they have 30, 40, 50 vaccines at the end of the day, they could call us up and we'd be able to deploy our teams with those vaccines, with our vaccinators out to those high-risk populations. So, it's moving forward. I'm I'm eager for Monday's call with, King County, and is going to be joining us on our Monday morning coordination call. We can present to them this, we call it Operation Field of Dreams. So if you build it, they will come. And I think it'll be harder for them to turn us down and not allocate vaccine once they see how well this site's put together. So any questions?
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to give our team a chance to enter whether or not they have a comment or question in the chat box. While they're doing that, I just want to thank you for all the work that you have done and brought towards this coordination effort. It's a great group that we brought together, and I do believe we're going to get at some point in time where our capacity to deliver the vaccine the supply exceeds our ability to deliver, and that this site will become part of the network and definitely a valuable asset for East King County and all of our neighbors to the east as well. So thank you for all the work you've been doing. I love those Monday morning calls. They're just
You're
great.
welcome. And, as Wally shared, the governor did today open up, or at least, they're estimating that phase, was it B, tier B1, phase 2, phase 1, tier 2, it's the next one. And that's going to open up to a lot of congregate care workers, additional high-risk populations, pregnant individuals.
Fantastic.
So you're going to start to see a lot more demand, and a lot more people who are going to be, that fit the demographics of Issaquah, that east side, these younger populations, that you're going to see a lot more people needing to get access to a vaccine, and having something in our backyard is going to be very important.
That's amazing. And the work of your mobile team to get to those who can't get to us is just, honestly, when I get an email from someone who's had a visit from an Eastside Fire and Rescue mobile team, it just makes my day. It's
Perfect.
amazing to see the reaction. I can imagine what your team gets when you show up at somebody's door who has just been isolated for so long. It's just
And
gotta be
they're
amazing.
busy at it again this week. We're doing a lot of second doses this week, as well as still coordinating with our human service representatives. So they're still at it every day. It's been about a month now. So yeah, all those second doses, we're going back to those initial populations and making sure that they're fully vaccinated now.
Fabulous, Andrew. And it does look like we have some folks who have comments and questions. So we'll start first with a question from Jason. Jason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Stevens, for all of your hard work and all of your colleagues' hard work. I'm sure it feels pretty good to see all of that come to fruition. I know the community has got to be excited. So I'm going to bore you with a couple pragmatic logistical questions. And the first, I guess, would be, as far as the signage, traffic mitigation, how are you guys planning to accommodate all of this interest, especially as you mentioned, we're going to be one of the few vaccination sites on the east side. Are these going to be off-peak hours? Is this going to be coordinated with IPD in terms of trying to keep that traffic flow, you know, somewhat light as possible, when probably could imagine at least, I would think upper hundreds, possibly low thousands amount of vehicles that typically aren't in our traffic now all of a sudden coming into the city and utilizing this awesome site.
No, those are great questions. One of the things this will be an appointment only site. That's going to be the first crucial aspect in trying to mitigate any of the traffic impacts, as well as mitigate just normal park usage for the state park. It's important. They're entering there. I mean, we've seen the beautiful weather the last couple of days. People are outside. They want to enjoy it. But I spent several days down at the King County mass vaccination sites down in Auburn and in Kent, and I've got a good idea of really where the backlogs are, where those choke points are, how many cars can be seen per hour, what that registration looks like. We're not expecting any traffic to be able to overflow outside of that Tibbetts Beach lot at all. It would be almost, I would not assume it to even really go beyond that really kind of entry lane all the way out. I think most of the cars, I think the biggest lanes we've seen, you might have 10, 12 cars at a time, and those can fit within the confined space that we have. And then they're just constantly moving, cycling out. A lot of it's going to be with messaging. A lot of it's going to be working with the PIOs of both jurisdictions and the surrounding areas, that if you have an appointment, please try to stick within that hour time frame. So one of the greeters' main jobs is to make sure that people are there. And, you know, we might see some, I guess, individuals trying to get in line that are just, hey, it's a vaccination site, I'm just going to get there. You know, our greeters are going to be able to check them in, check them out. If they're not on the list, they'll be able to push them to that outside kind of exit lane. So it shouldn't hold up any operations. And I think once it's established, once it gets going, people will have a better flow of how it works. We can always look at refining practices. And again, if this thing grows, we could expand it to 4 lanes just to mitigate less of those actions, working with the parks. We built this in a scalable manner. We can, right now with 2 lanes, we're expecting to be able to do 500 doses a day. And that's pretty manageable if we're open 6 days a week, looking at Tuesday through Saturday. And it really does come down to vaccine availability. We might start out slower based on our allocation, but that will help us work out some of those kinks.
Excellent. Thank you. Congratulations. Looking forward to my turn in line.
That's right.
Awesome. Jason, you said you had several questions. Do you have another one? Otherwise, I'll go to Mike Brennan.
That was it.
Thank you. Great question. Mike, you had one.
Great, thank you. And appreciate all you've done here. I think the partnership with the state parks is great, because I think the site and the configuration that you have set up is going to work really well. So, I mean, not a better location, I think. So, great work there. You actually answered my initial question. That was, how many vaccinations per day will you be able to handle? You said about 500. That's a pretty good number. And then you started answering the second question, and that's, it's scalable. So scalable up to what level? I mean, if this becomes a kind of a primary east side location, as you're ramping it up, how many do you think you could ultimately handle, and how do you staff it? Because it's got to be, I mean, what other partners do you have assisting to deliver the vaccines and provide all the logistic support that's necessary to make this operate?
No, excellent question. I think the limiting factors on scalability is one, how much the park is willing to offer us. Now, if King County and everyone is pushing hard on this, I don't think that would be a problem. They may just charge us for the space to, overdo some of those revenue losses. But at that point, we're working directly in concert with King County Public Health, and the state would, everyone would be able to make sure that those are reimbursable expenses as well. So basically, every lane is capable of doing every, driveway lane on that Tibbetts Beach Park could probably do 500 to 300 doses as they get a little smaller. Personnel, that's another great point. Right now, all of the clinical positions are being staffed by Eastside Fire and Rescue personnel. There are, however, lots of medical trained volunteers, RNs, and nurses, that are willing to volunteer their time. And again, if this thing grows and it becomes another almost King County Public Health sponsored site, we'd be able to get support through their staff, through their networks, through their volunteer coordination. And just as Eastside Fire and Rescue firefighters are trained to deliver vaccine, you're seeing more and more fire departments come on board. So we work with Snoqualmie Fire, Fall City. You work with Mercer Island, who's now doing Mercer mobile vaccination teams as well. So if this turned into a larger Eastside site, it might be no similar than the Auburn location, who's bringing in fire services and personnel from across the region to work that site. We could be doing something very similar here as well.
Thank you. Marisol has a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I actually have two questions. And thank you very much, Andrew, for answering all. Those are great answers. My first question is, you mentioned it's going to be by appointment only. And do you guys have a plan on how that's going to work? What are you going to use?
Again, that's one of the factors that is determining once we get, I guess, King County approval for vaccine allocations from King County, we would most likely be using the tools that they provide. So that would be, right now they're using Solve, which is registration software. And however, I think they're looking to migrate into a different software that directly interfaces with Waze, which is how the Washington immunization reporting. So right now they're looking at options. I've done several kind of software previews myself, or for some weird case that we are not able to access King County's software, which we should, then we can go out and we can source our own registration software. We've been doing this already, helping out with the Snoqualmie tribe. They've been using something as simple as, I think, Sign Up Genius. Is it perfect? No, but does it work? Absolutely. Issaquah School District has done their similar a self-registry. Something more public, we're going to want it more publicly facing, more robust. So there's plenty of tools. We live in kind of a software hub. I think there's plenty of tools out there, but most likely we'll be relying on the tools that King County has.
Marisol, what's your second question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for your answer. That's great. I really appreciate you guys looking into more options than only one. My second question is, you said that you're going to be providing more or less 500 doses per day. And how long does that take? Do you have an estimate on how long are you guys going to be open per day?
Yes, we're planning on probably being open for vaccines about from 10 o'clock in the morning to around 1600 in the afternoon. That gives our volunteers and staff time to get in around 09, our firefighters to come in off shift and, still get ready for that day, do volunteer briefings for the non-clinical roles, and then about an hour on the back end to close the site up and keep going. That's very manageable to do 500 in that amount of time. It's just a constant flow. We're constantly working through people, and if there's a need to stay open longer one day, we get longer daylight hours and so forth. The park right now opens around 06:30 and closes about a half hour after dusk. We could possibly make that work. It's just, I think it's harder on volunteers and clinical if you're doing, 12-hour days, so to speak. But in reality, if we had the personnel and staffing, we could do this 24/7.
Thank you, Marisol. Shashi, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Polly, and thank you, Andrew Stevens. You're doing a great job. Applaud. First comment, it's going to take around 5 months to vaccinate, give 2 doses unless Johnson & Johnson comes. And number one, the biggest question, when are we going to receive vaccinations? I hear on the news, it's coming next week, God knows when. Number two, then how are you going to give appointments to the non-tech people? I know some of my friends who had to wait and their children did it, but sometimes they don't have that kind of family or somebody. So, and they are seniors and vulnerable. And I also noticed in King County, around 73% of seniors have been given at least one dose. I could not see the data for Issaquah separately, but I wish if that's available, we will know. But my calculation of 5 months for the Issaquah population, considering it's 40,000. So, and now I'm worried about our being opening to phase 3, where they can have face-to-face, and which is, I think, is very worrisome. And now tier 2 is going to open for vaccination from March 17. It's just recently been said by our governor. So I don't know how the management would be, but that's my question and comment. Thank you.
Now,
Great
you know,
question.
we're always focusing on trying to reach those most vulnerable populations for sure. And just because this vaccine site, when it does open, again, we don't have a deadline. We are hoping early April. That is what King County is kind of leaned towards. Again, they are going to be continuing to see the pressure, but you're going to continue to see more and more vaccine become available, especially as they open this up to broader populations. They're just not going to be able to do everyone. They're going to need support. However, on the most vulnerable populations, as our mobile vaccine teams, for example, they have been focusing on senior living facilities, nursing homes, homebound senior populations. We're working through those populations. I would say we're probably complete. Now, we're going to continue to get additional access on where our mobile vaccine teams can deploy. So whether, there's nothing saying that when we get the greater authority from King County Public Health and King County EMS, we could do smaller pop-up clinics at various locations, whether it's a cultural center or a church or an apartment complex, where you're addressing some of these high-risk populations that may not have transportation, they may not have access. We can explore other opportunities, possibly through human services, where I know the Redmond site, for example, has partnered with Lyft or Uber to be able to pick people up and take them to the site. There's options out there. And then as far as getting the word out there, we want to make sure there's, a broad program, targeting populations. So we're going to be looking at printing out information in various languages, distributing it out across the communities, working within the community leaders that have these networks, and working within the human service organizations that, are already, hand in hands with some of the most vulnerable out there. So that the information will be provided on various fronts. And if people can't come to us, that's why we have our mobile teams as well that can hopefully then go to them. And that's why the jurisdictions have been doing great. They've been identifying these personnel. They've been building out a roster of who might need the vaccine. So if we do have extra doses or we are able to deploy our teams out, we can get them quickly. I hope that answers your question.
Andrew, I'm going to ask also if our Parks and Community Services Director or City Administrator could talk about a phone line that we have set up that Shashi and others can share, where we collect information from those who are having difficulty navigating technology, getting their own appointment. We are collecting information so that when vaccine is available to our teams, we can reach out to them. So I see City Administrator Bob Quitz has turned his camera on. So, Wally.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the task force, good afternoon. We do have a number that the mayor just sent out to the entire community about an hour ago. And I was trying to pull up the email. If you received the mayor's update email, it is included in there. And so what we're doing is, for those individuals who need help, we're putting out a number so that they can call our Parks and Community Services Department through our senior center and make those connections. That group has been working on this for several weeks and has gotten pretty good at it. And so now we are letting folks know that if they need help, they can call area code 425-837-3300, and we'll help them sort through what their needs may be. We understand that not everyone has access to technology, so we want to be as helpful as we can. So the mayor just sent that out to the community in the last hour and a half.
Great. I wonder, Joanne, if you could also put a link in the chat box to sign up for my newsletter for this group in particular so that they're aware of whatever communication I'm putting out to the mayor's office. That would be great. And Andrew, it looks like we way underestimated the interest in vaccinations. And I guess I should have known this group has been talking about vaccination delivery since we first met. And so, of course, they would have a lot of questions from you. I just wanted to thank you and say one of the reasons we're doing this is because of the comments from the Issaquah Recovery Task Force. They're concerned about making sure that we are ready when doses come, and now we're out there with these mobile teams, but we're certainly getting ready with the drive-through facility as well. And also that, King County Public Health is stretched really thin. And for them to set up and man their own vaccination site in Auburn, which I have visited myself for a COVID test, was a big, heavy lift. And what we're doing here right now with this group and this team and your help is providing a potential opportunity for a regional facility, and we're getting it ready to go. Just turn the key and it's ready to go. That is a huge service, not just to Issaquah, but to the service region in general. And I am so grateful for that. And it is in addition to the Issaquah Recovery Center at the Holiday Inn that we're already working with King County in partnership on. So huge demonstration of the ability for us to partner up and be successful with these organizations. So Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today and all the work you're doing, and I'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor.
Fabulous. The next item under regular business today, and my agenda keeps disappearing on me, is an update on Fit and Fun Outdoors update. And this was a concept that this group had talked about in terms of ways that we can encourage people to do COVID-friendly and safe outdoor activities. It's going to be presented by our Director of Parks and Community Services, Jeff Watling.
Mayor Polly, thank you so much. Boy, that's exciting news to hear about all the planning and work with vaccines. So much progress there. Along those same lines or similar lines with mapping out COVID recovery, I think when I was last here, we were brainstorming some pretty exciting ideas of additional ways to foster the use of our park spaces and outdoor recreation. We took those ideas and really worked as staff to figure out what we could add to our work plan. We had 5 ideas that really came from that brainstorming with you that we took forward to City Council, had a great discussion with them. Council supported all 5 of those ideas. So just a quick update as I'll run down those 5 and let you know where we're at and how we're moving forward. The first idea was this idea of locating some fitness equipment within our park system to provide outdoor opportunities for folks to exercise and to gather. And we've gotten the thumbs up to proceed with that. We're going to spend around $35,000. We're working with our park planner, Jennifer Fink, will be leading this effort. We'll be serving as the project lead on this. Working with some of our sports med partners. We're looking at finalizing a location somewhere along the Rainier Trail. As we've looked at our system, we want to find a spot that isn't isolated, that supports other park activities, other trail use activities, is also accessible for mixed income communities. So we'll be working on finalizing a location somewhere on the valley floor, somewhere within Old Town on the Rainier Trail. We've also had some initial discussions with our planning and permitting folks. We have the pleasure of, as we add anything to our system, we too need to go through that permit process. So we are looking at probably sometime in April having something installed. We've also reached out to our local vendor, Northwest Playgrounds, who reps a number of outdoor fitness options and fitness equipment. So good news, and that we'll be buying local as we do this work. So good progress on that front. Again, Jennifer Fink is leading that effort. The other idea we talked about was creating opportunities to get on our trails and use some temporary signage to create what we're calling walk and learn opportunities, where we'd have topical historical items, historical topics, cultural topics that as families, folks go recreate on trails, temporary signs could help educate or tell the story. And so Amy Dukes, who's our arts coordinator, is going to be leading this effort. She's already been working with the Historical Society. We've reached out to King County Library System as well. We're going to lean on partners for content, and then drawing up a game plan to find a variety of locations, both on the valley floor and maybe some of our trails up in the hills, either Park Point or Tradition Plateau, and have a variety of locations this spring and summer for that program to launch. A third item that we talked about and brainstormed with you was this idea of looking at our sports courts and finding ways to create multiple uses. How do we take an existing asset and create more function within it? In particular, we've heard a lot from residents about pickleball. And so how might we use some of our existing tennis courts or basketball courts and create mixed use and multiple uses? We have put together a parks team, primarily with our park operations group. Good timing, and that we're due to do some restriping on some of our tennis courts this spring. So we're evaluating 5 different park locations that have a variety of court types, and looking to situate a couple of pickleball courts, again, that wouldn't change the use, would just add multiple uses and multiple ways to recreate on the sports courts that we already have. Coincidentally, we had a neighborhood meeting about Blackberry Park in the South Cove area. I thought it was interesting that during that conversation, this need for pickleball in the South Cove community came up a couple of times. And so we're able to talk about this fit and fun activity, and Merewood Park being a candidate for utilizing that tennis court to create, again, multiple use and pickleball. So fun to see planning efforts that coincide and support one another. A fourth item we talked about was ways that we could further promote scavenger hunts, geocaching, ways for families to get out into our park spaces and do those activities. Molly and Kathy from our community center are going to be leading this effort. This is really going to be more of a promotional effort. As we've done research, there are a number of pretty cool scavenger hunts that have been created throughout our park system. There's a scavenger hunt for public art. There's some geocaching that already happens well within our park system. There's a pretty big event that's already scheduled this summer. So what we want to do is really capitalize on those activities that are already happening and find some fun ways to promote those options and opportunities that are already scheduled to happen and will be happening this spring and summer. And then the last item that we brainstormed with all of you was our summer concerts, our concerts on the green that have been such a long-standing tradition here in Issaquah. We had to obviously call a timeout last summer, but what does it look like to continue that this summer? And good news, our events team, along with our partners for those concerts, have already initiated that planning effort. Right now, we're looking at and planning for 8 concerts that would start in July and August. We are keeping close watch over COVID protocols and what those events look like in terms of size and capacity allowed. We'll really determine what the final product looks like. But in terms of scheduling the concerts themselves, doing some of the pre-planning work, we've got that underway. You may recall when I came and spoke with you a couple of times last year, we used this approach of what we called rolling decision points, where we want to be smart and informed when it comes to programs. And so we're taking that exact same approach with these concerts. We've identified late May as really sort of our first key point to see what those July events would look like and how we might need to manage them. Coincidentally, good news with phase 3 announcement. It certainly feels like and looks like we're, as a state, continuing to progress in the right direction. But with concerts and doing the planning now, we want to be poised and in position to be able to bring those back in a safe way that can support community. So those are the 5. That's a real quick update on how those are taking shape. We've got a number of other really fun programmatic items that we continue to work on that are part of our regular 2021 work plan, everything from farmers market to some engagement we're doing about a couple of park investments at Blackberry Park and Hillside Park. Plenty happening to, again, try and support Issaquah community getting out and recreating in its wonderful parks and trail system.
Thank you, Director Watling. I'll give our team a few seconds to see if they want to put a question or comment in the chat. Really excited about all that you are working on. I think these are some great, safe ads that we can have this summer, which is wonderful. I'm not seeing any comments right now. Jeff, thank you and your team for all that you're doing. I realized now when I went back to the agenda that I don't have to worry about going over because we had assumed today was a light meeting. And now I realize that, when we get to general comments at the end, I think City Administrator Bob Quitz has a few extra things to talk about as well. But anyway, thank you, Jeff. The next item under the regular agenda this evening is Human Services Update, and this will be presented by Monica Negrilla, who is our Human Services Manager. Monica.
Thank you so much, Mayor Polly. Good evening, and good evening, Recovery Task Force members. Thank you so much for having us back here. Tonight, I'm gonna go back to actually vaccinations and provide a brief overview of our newest task and endeavor, and that is trying to work on providing language access in terms of vaccinations and community members who may not be able to access information through the mainstream efforts. And so as Issaquah continues to grow and develop and diversify, we know that about 30% of our residents speak another language than English. And so trying to reach to those hard to reach community members and vulnerable populations takes a little bit of different work when perhaps we might try to reach out to them in a different language or when English is not their first language. In addition to technology problems, they might need help with understanding the overall process. They might need help with translated materials, or sometimes they might just fear or don't have fully trust in the existing processes in place. So any type of support and additional information that we can provide, it's going to help with this process. So what we try to do, in addition to reaching out to our nonprofit partners with whom we've been working over the last month, and our team at the recovery, on the recreation team and senior center, they have been helping they've done an amazing job in working with our nonprofit partners and reaching to seniors. We also started doing an inventory of community language resource needs and also resources available. So what we tried was we started reaching out to the churches in our city, and we are also working with other grassroots groups. We also intend to reach out to apartment buildings and HOAs, as well as businesses who might employ residents who speak another language. And so really our intent is to engage and provide information, but also gather information and expand the pool of volunteers and expand the pool of trusted messengers that could deliver ongoing communications about vaccinations available, how to best find the resources, and then schedule them for our mobile team, or once the clinic is up and going, to be able to communicate with them and have them receive the so needed vaccinations. So that was just kind of like a brief overview of our newest outreach and engagement efforts. And of course, we would love to hear from you if you have other ideas on how to best reach community members who are difficult to reach, or how can we best do this work. We would love to hear any thoughts and feedback that you have on that. Thank you.
Monica, that's amazing. Thank you. Your team has been doing such a just phenomenal work during this crisis. I can't thank you enough. It looks like Jason has a comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Manager Negrilla. So this is more of just kind of thinking, and I know one of the places that would serve probably the more vulnerable population would be Issaquah Food Bank. I'm sure somebody's already thought of this, but I thought I'd throw it out there. And then as far as second languages, illustrations help. And I know without getting too corny or small-minded about it, I'm sure people have already thought about this, but illustrations when English is not your first language or Spanish is your first language, those help. And it's how we all learn to read, it's how we all learn to write. So sometimes it is something as silly as a little syringe with a happy face talking about vaccines in a very simple manner. And again, I don't know what that looked like. It's just, I guess it's common sense that if you are struggling with a language, illustrations tend to help a lot. So just a thought. But thank you.
That's a great point, Jason. I know when we were doing our park signage, we tried to use as many graphical cues as we could, and we got a lot of compliments about the understandability of the signs. Thank you for that. That is great. So Monica, there are no other comments or questions. Thanks for the update on that. Thank you. Thank you. Going to move to the next item. It's an economic recovery update. It's going to be presented by Jen Davis-Hayes, who is our Economic Development Manager. Welcome, Jen. And there she goes. Jen, I think you're still muted. Wally, I'm not sure if you had a preview.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Hi, Jen.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you great. Thank you.
I still have to do the *6. I didn't remember. Sorry about that. So I'm on my phone for the audio and video for the computer. So having some technical difficulties. I apologize, Mayor Polly. Good afternoon, task force members. I'm here to give you an update about the latest round of business grants, and I do have a couple slides that I can share with you to have some numbers here in front of you. Because as Jason mentioned, pictures and numbers and charts are easy to sometimes hear, to see and understand. So hopefully you can see that slide. Is that correct?
Sorry, Jen, it says starting to share content, so we're not quite there yet.
Okay, that's fine. My computer is having issues today. So I'll just share the information. So we have had several rounds.
Jen, before you start, if you could share it with Joanne, she may be able to display it. Let's give that a shot, and then we'll start with the verbal presentation, see if we can get that.
Sure.
I have one thing to add too, Jen. If you try turning your video camera off, that may give you more bandwidth. You're probably having a bandwidth issue.
Yeah, now it's not letting me do either of those things. Okay, I will share this PowerPoint presentation with Joanne right now, and we'll rely on my phone. So again, we have had several grant programs, and thank you very much for your support of these in the past. Last July was the first time that we put a grant application out for the Small Business Response Grant, and we ended up funding 123 businesses for over $1.1 million of assistance. And a lot of that money came from the federal CARES Act dollars. We also had a business reinvention grant, which we worked with our Economic Vitality Commission about, and that was to support businesses that were going to look at how they have pivoted and what things they can do to really change and adjust to the new conditions of doing business during COVID. And we funded 11 businesses for $95,000. And then we did the winterization grants, again, trying to support restaurants to increase their capacity for serving their customers. And there were 8 businesses that we served for a total of $50,000. So overall, 142 businesses received $1.3 million of assistance. And those 142 businesses are non-duplicative. So we did not provide a grant to somebody in each of those categories. You can only receive a grant one time from the city. And so moving forward, we know that businesses are still struggling, and we created a new grant program in 2021 called the Business Recovery Grant. And we changed some things from things that we learned and feedback that we received from our previous grant process. For instance, we created categories of grants and different levels of support. So one of those categories is home-based businesses. And that, oh, okay, my WebEx is now working out now. So, okay. Oh, good. So it looks like Joanne's sharing the screen. So we're looking at the third slide. It says 2021. Perfect. So home-based businesses, we are going to offer up to a maximum of $2,500, and we anticipate to provide 10 grants to home-based businesses. We split out the brick and mortar businesses. We have a category for the 10 or less, and then 11 through 25. And we had a really robust discussion with our vision partners. So you may remember that's the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Issaquah Association, Issaquah Highlands Council, Visit Issaquah, as well as the Gilman Village Merchants Association. And what they came to, kind of encourage us to do is to think about splitting these into 2 categories, because some of the smaller businesses still need some help. But if you have a larger business, you have larger overhead, and even so offering a little bit additional assistance to those businesses would be really helpful. So as you'll see, we have the split of the number of grants totaling $250,000. So applications were open until this Monday, March 8th at noon. And tomorrow morning, we'll do a randomization. And with our Vision Partners group, we do that on video. We record it to make sure everybody is seeing the same thing. And basically, then we go and finalize eligibility, and we plan to inform the businesses by the end of March. The next slide, please. So as of today, here's the data about these grants applications that we received. So again, we have $250,000 that we are able to allocate. We had a request for up to $640,000. We have 130 applications. Of that, 37 are home-based, 92 are brick and mortar, and then you can see the split out. So we really did receive a lot of grant applications, the majority from 10 employees and less. And really great to see that 65% of all the applications we received are from women or minority-owned business applicants. So I have a note in the bottom there that, we're still in the process of eligibility review. And what that means is we look at some of the criteria requirements were that you had to be up to date on your business B&O tax. You had to have a current Issaquah business license. You had to make sure that you're registered with the Secretary of State. So we, after the randomization, we have done an initial review of those. We double and triple check because we want to make sure we don't deny somebody by mistake and or that the information that we have is correct. So we will do that in Friday and next week, and hopefully maybe even get the grants awards out earlier than the end of the month, which we believe we can, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So that is it. Thank you.
Jen, thank you. And Joanne, if you want to stop sharing, that would be awesome. Great presentation, Jen. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions or comments on the business grant program. This has been very successful. Businesses have been coming to council meetings and talking about the difference this can make to a small business. And just so excited that we've been able to continue with support even into 2021 because the issues for businesses are still there. So let's start with Janine, and Janine has a question for the group, or for Jen.
Thanks very much, Development Manager Hayes. That was really helpful. Some of it was breaking up for me, so I may miss this. I think you said the federal CARES grant, if that's correct. I was curious to know, when will you know if that is going to be something that will be renewed again, where we could go through this kind of cycle again and maybe help other businesses as well?
And Jen, I'm not
sorry,
sure if you or Wally want to take that question because there's a big new pile of money coming in. So
Yeah, I think if City Administrator Bakubitz could.
And Janine, we're going to talk about it the next thing under future business.
Okay, perfect.
So
Okay.
I don't want to leave you hanging, but give us 5 more minutes and we'll tell you all about it.
No,
great question, Janine.
no, it sounds like some really exciting, great work to be able to help so many.
Thanks, Janine. Yes, I agree. It's good work. And next we have Mike Brennan with a question.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. So kind of a related question, but can you let us know how many of the qualified applicants didn't receive a grant who may be eligible in this next round as additional money that we'll hear about in a few minutes comes to the city? So just curious about, of the people who applied that were qualified, just roughly how many of those applications weren't awarded a grant as a result of the limited funds that were available?
And are you referring to the previous grant rounds?
Yes, previous.
Okay, so and so that were qualified. Yes, and so I can actually pull up. I believe I have that information somewhere, but I'll pull up that information. Are there any other questions?
And Jen, I think you can also mention what we anticipate with this next round, that we don't believe we're going to be able to fund all the applications that we most recently have received either.
And that's true. And so actually we probably do, again, without looking in cross comparing yet, how many businesses of those who applied, 130 applied this time, applied last time but didn't get funded, right? So we, as you see as you saw in that one slide, we do not have enough. We have $640,000 worth of requests and only $250,000 to fund. So there'll be, qualified businesses out of this round. The other piece is the reason we wanted to actually reopen the application is because businesses that submitted their applications in July of last year, it's a very different world right now, right? And so while it kind of would have been easier just to go down the list, and we did that several times throughout the year when more funding was made available, we decided it was really important to make sure that, one, we collect new information and make sure that, some businesses are maybe doing worse, some businesses may be doing better. So I think if we move forward, we wouldn't go back to a July application. We'd more likely go to this application. But I can still find that number for you and let you know.
I appreciate that answer. I think that's probably fine. You don't need to chase more numbers, but thank you for the answer.
Thank you, Jen. Not seeing any more questions on Jen's presentation on the economic recovery update, but Jen's team consists of her and Benton. So it's a team of 2 that is managing, a grant program that she has created and developed and modified and adjusted and been flexible and been swamped by demand. So great work, Jen. Thank you for what you're doing. And Wally, it looks now like we're going to move into other business, which when we were planning this meeting a week ago, I thought would be just a few minutes long. And this is COVID. Within days of the meeting, you and I thought up a few more significant items, and then the governor decides to make his announcement today. So there is no end to this ever-evolving situation. So do you want to take it away on the other business and announcements?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the task force. Good afternoon. Lots going on. You've heard about our vaccination efforts. Those will continue. The governor has made an announcement this afternoon moving the reopening to a phase 3, the specifics of which are still coming out, but certainly there'll be more things open, more people able to participate in things. Major League Baseball will be able to have, I guess, up to 8,000 or 9,000 folks. So that's all great news, and that will begin on March 22nd. The governor also announced this afternoon going to the next tier of vaccinations, and that will begin on March 17th. And the President of the United States is apparently getting ready to go on television at 5 o'clock Pacific time and instruct all of the states to be able to be prepared to vaccinate any individual over 16 years of age who would like a vaccination beginning May 1st. So that's just this afternoon. So lots of things happening there. On the finance front, the Issaquah City Council is discussing another grant program, which they began discussing a couple weeks back for nonprofits. And so the council's had a brief discussion and a couple of weeks ago, a longer discussion this week about what that would entail. Mayor Pauly made a proposal for $100,000 of grant funding for 501c3 organizations that serve Issaquah. The council has asked us to come back with more details on that, and also a plan for 501c4 and c6 organizations. For those of you who aren't acquainted with the fine points of the Internal Revenue Code, 501c3s are your sort of more traditional nonprofits, those that if you give money to, you get a tax deduction, a general charity type nonprofit. 501c4s and c6s tend to be a little bit more specialized. Many of them are economic development or business-related associations. Here in Issaquah, for example, the Chamber of Commerce, the Highlands Council, those are examples of C4s and C6s. So the council will meet again on, I said April 15th, but that's not correct, April 5th, to talk about that. In addition, the bill that the president signed today, $1.9 trillion assistance, the bill had $316 billion, excuse me, $316 million, $1.9 trillion, $316 billion for cities and states. Issaquah knows what its allocation is, and it is $8,600,000. So Issaquah will be getting $8.6 million from the federal government as part of the relief effort. So that, of course, begs the question, what to do with $8.6 million. What I'd like to do is share my screen, if I can, and I'd like to share with you the language that is in the Federal Relief Act. And hopefully you can see that now. Mayor Pauly, can you see that?
My apologies,
Anybody?
Wally. Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, great. So this is open to further regulation and policy work, but as you can see, A is to respond to the public health emergency in respect to the coronavirus disease 2019 or its negative economic impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits, or aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. B is to respond to workers performing essential work during COVID-19 public health emergency by providing premium pay to eligible workers. The type of local governments, we are a non-entitlement use of local government for the purpose of this act, and providing grants to eligible employers that have eligible workers who perform essential work, for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue of such governments related to revenues collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency, and to make necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So those are the four very broad pots of funds that we can spend money on. Clearly, we have already spent dollars in many of these areas, but I think with the passage of this bill, we're going to have a greater latitude now to decide how this gets spent. So Mayor Pauly, in considering best next steps, would like to once again come to all of you as the Recovery Task Force for your assistance and guidance to her and to the City Council as to how this might work. And so what we would like to do is propose a special meeting of the task force either at this same scheduled time next month, which would be, Joanne, if I'm reading my calendar correctly, April 8th. So either at this time or perhaps in the early evening, and have this be a meeting that we would invite the community to, and have an opportunity to sort of in more detailed terms explain what these provisions are, share with you anything new we learn between now and then. But the mayor's wish is to have you not talk about specific dollar amounts to go to specific purposes, but really to talk about goals and objectives. What should the community's goals be in the spending of this money, and then go from there. So our hope would be to, again, either have this meeting at 4 o'clock on April 8th or another time very close to that time frame. But we would then likely go to the City Council at its regular meeting either on April 19th or perhaps a special City Council meeting where the City Council is about to start its capital improvement program review. And so we're running up against those meetings as well during the month of April and May. But to have this group joined by members of the community to talk about what priorities make sense for spending this Relief Act money. So, Mayor Pauly, I think that's the next question for the group. Does this sound good? What kind of timing makes sense? What kind of outreach should we be doing to advertise to community members that they can come to discuss? Though again, not specific. Give $50,000 to Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank, but is food and shelter, is supporting other organizations. Again, there's broad opportunities here. Should we be thinking of other organizations that have provided first response? Certainly, for example, Swedish Hospital over the course of the last year has spent, untold numbers of dollars serving the Issaquah community. Are there opportunities to support them? Hospitality industry, lots of questions. What should those broad categories be? What should the priorities be? And then we can come back and start crunching numbers and making decisions now. Mayor Pauly, happy to answer any questions folks may have.
That is great, Wally. Thank you. Also, Eastside Fire and Rescue. Eastside Fire and Rescue is not the city of Issaquah. It is a larger jurisdiction. They have a larger jurisdiction in many partner cities, and they have incurred a lot of expenses and have not necessarily been eligible for reimbursement. I would love to just add a little more of Mayor's framework. So sometimes I have to take something that's in my head that I can see as a picture and try and use my words to figure out how to convey what I'm hoping to get. So bear with me on this. There are many levels of government that are providing aid. So the federal government, state government, counties, and cities. And we all have certain levers that we can pull to make difference during a crisis and during a regular, the normal days pre-COVID. And so each group, each level of government will be able to do certain things. And so a city jurisdiction itself doesn't have to do everything that the community members may need because there may be available programs and funds at other levels of government. So one thing is that it'll be a little bit of an education for us to try and work with our community and work with our electeds to sort of explain that and make sure that we are spending our dollars in the best way we can to make effective outcomes without putting a little bit of money into a program that the county may already be investing in heavily. So we want to make sure that we're taking these dollars and being as impactful as we can and do that within all of the work that's being done at every other level of government as well. So that is going to cause a little confusion as we talk our way through this. My hope is that we come up as a task force with some guiding principles. We get input from the public, we get your thoughts and input, and these are principles that say, this is how we believe that the money can be invested back into the community in certain areas over a certain period of time. And so as Wally said, it doesn't need to be let's find out, let's name the buckets and start putting money in. It really needs to be an investment strategy. And I want to start with you in the community, bring a proposal to council, and they will also have their own public touches as well, so that we're really getting as many voices at the table as we can. There may be things in the community going on that we haven't heard yet, and we need to hear some more about. So I think Wally did a really good job of explaining it. It's a very, very large amount of money. If I remember correctly, Wally, we had to draw down our reserves this year by $4 million, and our budget for this year is at least $10 million less than last year. So $8 million for emergency response and recovery doesn't cover all that was lost, but it's a huge leap forward. It's a big opportunity, and it'd be really exciting to have that conversation with you all. And I do see that Trish has a question, and if anyone else has a question or comment, please enter it in the chat box. Trish.
Yeah, I think having a meeting with the community is a great idea. And so we're basically talking about a community convening, correct?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, and this is just a small suggestion, and I've participated in several Issaquah community convenings. I think 4 p.m. is too early in the day. I think we probably need to kind of push it to more of an evening start. That's just an idea. I think we're going to be, because a lot of people can't log on at 4.
That's a great suggestion, Chris. Thank you very much. I know when I was working in PTA, we always had that push or pull whether or not to do a daytime or a nighttime meeting, because you want to try and get those who can make either. So thank you for that suggestion.
But I think it's a great idea.
Oh, thank you, Trish. That's great. Jason, you have a question as well.
I think it kind of morphed now into a comment, and I do agree with Ms. Bloor. Probably a later evening session will get a bigger impact, and if the idea is to bring in as many people from the community, I think that's a great suggestion. One other thing I'd like to see, Mayor Pauley or Administrator Bobkowitz, is the city also suffered through this. We lost resources, we lost staff. So when we present it to the public, they should also know what the city incurred. So as much as possible, explaining, and I know we're not going to have accurate figures perfectly, but kind of explaining, okay, we had the hospitality, we had our restaurants, we had Swedish, we had the East Side Fire and Rescue, but here we also have our city, because like I said, a healthy Issaquah does make for healthier residents, and it's important. One of the reasons people like to live in our city is because we do have good governance, good structure. So I think it just needs to be another part of the pot, and I don't want it to get missed, because I don't think the idea is to hoard the money or try and put it back in the reserves necessarily. We do need to make sure it gets out into the community and hopefully in an equitable fashion, but we also want to make sure that the city is at least has its position put out there for the public, so the public can also decide, okay, well, we do want maybe this allocation over here. If we're going to have guiding principles, it shouldn't be lost that like I said, as well as East Side Fire and Rescue, as well as Swedish, well, also the city of Issaquah, the public library, everything. So just wanted to point that out.
Jason, that's a great comment. One of the things that's floating around with the mayors across the country, we do a lot of teleconferencing so that we all don't have to solve the same problem a different way and recreate the wheel. The words that come out are using the funds for recovery, which could mean supporting agencies, businesses, nonprofits, using it to reimagine. We're not going back to exactly the same type of community we had before. There may be investments we want to make that are different than what we've done before. And I'll give you a for instance. The city itself needs to figure out how to bring people back to work. What is the future of work? And that's going to require an investment. And then the other is rebuild. There are things that did not happen or did not get the attention they need. And in Wally's address, he talked about some infrastructure investments that are able to be made. So the recover, reimagine, and rebuild is a framework we can use. There's a few other ones that are out there. So just sort of putting your thinking caps on about that and how, that might inform the guiding principles would be great. And you're right. We want strong services for our community, which includes a strong government, firefighting force, EMT, nonprofit network, all of that. We really want to build that fabric back from where it has been torn away a little bit. And so it's going to be a very interesting conversation. And let's see, that was Jason. Let's go to Marisol for a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to say for, just to start looking at places that we haven't looked and heard from, and this is looking into everything. I feel that, as was mentioned by the Human Services, language access is huge. And just looking at the population that hasn't applied for any of the grants and that hasn't had the opportunity because they didn't know that money was there. And when they realized that they applied, it was too late. So just having our options open for everybody and all our residents. Thank you.
Boy, I see that just as a great guiding principle. What have we missed? Make sure that that's a component of our planning. That's fantastic. And Shashi has a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Polly, and thank you, Wally, for letting us know we have some relief fund, great relief. Yes, we have had losses, but there should be some fair distribution to have the recovery, and everybody will feel, well, my department is so suffered most, I need all the money and stuff like that. So maybe it's a little bit of a homework till the next meeting to do kind of analysis, what percentage have we lost where, and what seriousness, what severity, and then come out with some figures so that nobody feels left out and there is complete fairness in trying to bring them up. I know some businesses have been lost permanently. So some money, which Jen Davis was mentioning that we have that, probably we should consider bringing some of the businesses which are gone forever, we thought have gone forever, if we can give them rebirth. It could be kind of a rebirth for all of us. I'm not sure about that, but it's going to take a little time, but things will be okay. So we need to be fair and do a little homework about it. Thank you so much.
Shashi, that's a great comment. City Administrator Bobkowitz, I'm not seeing any more questions and comments. Did you have anything you wanted to add for the group now that you've heard back a little bit from them?
Other than to thank the group for their great input, I think what we'll propose just logistically is that in lieu of this meeting next month will be this larger community convening. So it sounds as if folks are supportive of an early evening, 6:30, 7 o'clock start time. So we'll either shoot to do it on this meeting date next month, which would be the 8th of April, or sometime more or less around that time. So we'll check the overall city calendar, make sure that there's not other conflicts with other groups. Our various boards and commissions often meet Wednesday, Thursdays. So we'll pick a time and a date. We'll let you know as soon as we have that, and then we'll get the word out broadly in the community about what we're planning to do. So thanks, Mayor Polly, for letting me share all this information.
That's fabulous. I'm not sure where other cities are, but I do know that this recovery task force gets mentioned quite often regionally as being a really great sounding board for how the city administration should manage through this crisis. So I am just so glad that you have stuck with us through this whole year when I asked you originally for 2 months of your time. I think the work that you're doing is very important. I think some things that have come out of this task force have been modeled in other cities directly out of this task force. The work that you are doing is incredibly beneficial to my team and to Wally and I. And so I just want to reiterate that again. We're going into new territory. We're going to talk about how to spend $8 million. I had no idea that that's what I was asking you to do last year. So just, putting some, just no homework, but putting some thought into maybe what that framework would look like is great. And Wally, I did think we had another other business one, and it was that we might be doing a future poll. And if continuing into the recovery phase, this group would like to continue to meet, we may be switching from the second Thursday of the month to a different Thursday of the month due to some conflicts I have with some regional equity teams that I'm joining.
Right, and I think we'll get back to you on that. I think Joanne and I will work with the group. I think now that we've got we know that April we'll be able to avoid the conflict in April. So we'll see what the world looks like in May. I think we are approaching a winding down of this group. As we look at, reopening or return to office for the city staff, perhaps that will be a good time to then perhaps put this group on a quarterly or some other time frame. And so we're looking hopefully to reopen our offices sometime in the month of July. So stay tuned. I think that rather than spend a lot of time looking at a firm schedule moving forward, we know what we'll be doing in the month of April, and we'll worry about May and beyond soon.
That sounds great. My only hope is that continue to stay in phase 3 or move to phase 4 so that I'm able to actually thank all these people in person when we're finally winding down. That would be fantastic. Are there any other comments or questions? Because I don't believe we have any other announcements at this time. Not seeing any in the chat. So our next meeting, April 8th, may be an evening meeting. We have some work to do on that. And if there's no other business, we're adjourned at 5:17. Thank you all. Great conversation. Take care. Stay well.